All right, today we're going to talk about something super important for all you Virginia educators out there, accessible instructional materials. We're going to break down what they are, who they're for, and, most importantly, how you can get these tools into the hands of the students who really need them.
Okay, so let's just start with this big question, right? Think about it. What do we do when the very thing that's supposed to help a student learn, a textbook, a worksheet, is actually the thing holding them back? How do we fix that?
Well, to really get to the solution, we've got to understand the problem. And for a lot of our students, the problem is something called a print disability. So what does that even mean, print disability? Well, it's a pretty broad term. Basically, it's any condition that gets in the way of a student being able to read standard print. We're talking about anything from dyslexia to a visual impairment or even a physical disability that makes it tough to just hold a book and turn the pages.
Okay, so that's the barrier. How do we break it down? This is where the solution comes in. Accessible instructional materials, or what we call AIM. And believe me, this is the key.
So AIM aren't some kind of separate curriculum. It's the same stuff everyone else is using. The textbooks, the worksheets, you name it. But it's been converted into a format that a specific student can actually use. Think of it like this. Same information, just a different delivery method that actually works for them.
And format can mean a lot of different things, right? For a student who is blind, that's going to be Braille. For someone with low vision, maybe it's just large print. And for a whole bunch of other students, it could be audiobooks or digital text that a computer can read aloud. So many options.
Now, if you're an educator in Virginia, you're in luck. There is a specific state-funded service just for this. It's called AIM VA, and honestly, it is a total game changer.
So what is AIM VA exactly? Well, it's a service from the Virginia Department of Education, and here's the best part. It provides these materials for free for any eligible K-12 student who has an IEP. I'll say that again, at no cost to the school. Okay, so that word eligible is obviously super important. Who qualifies for this? Well, there's a really clear path to figure that out.
It's basically a three-step process. Step 1, the student has to have an IEP. That's non-negotiable. Step 2, that IEP has to clearly state that the student needs alternative print materials. And finally, Step 3, someone called a competent authority has to officially confirm that, yep, this student has a print disability.
Now, this is a really important detail, so listen up. When you're documenting this in the IEP, you need to be specific about the need. You'd write something like, student needs audio text, or requires enlarged print. What you don't do is write AIM VA in the IEP. Why? Because AIM VA is the service that gets you the materials, it's not the accommodation itself. That's a huge distinction.
All right, so to make all of this happen, it really does take a team. Let's talk about who does what, the key players in this whole process.
First up, we have this person called the competent authority. Sounds official, right? Well, it is. This is the professional. Could be a special ed teacher, a school psychologist, a therapist, who looks at all the evaluation data and makes the official call that, yes, this student's disability makes it hard for them to read regular print.
Okay, next we have the Digital Rights Manager, or DRM. This person has two huge jobs. First, they're the one who actually goes into the AIMVA portal and orders the materials. And second, and this is super important, they make sure that those copyrighted materials are only used by the student they were ordered for. It's all about protecting copyright.
And this chart here kind of shows how it's all structured. You see, there are different levels of DRMs. At the base level, they can add students and order books, but as you move up the ladder to, say, a lead DRM or a certifying DRM, they get more permissions like managing other users or being the one to give that final certification of eligibility.
Okay, so we've talked about the nuts and bolts, but let's zoom out for a second. Where does AIM VA fit into the grand scheme of things, into building schools that are truly accessible for everyone?
It's helpful to think about this in terms of an MTSS or RTI framework. AIMVIA, with its specific eligibility rules, is really a Tier 3 resource. It's a highly targeted intervention for that specific group of students with a documented need.
But, and this is a big but, the ultimate goal is so much bigger than that. The real dream is to make accessible materials a Tier 1 thing, something that's just there for everyone. Not as a special add-on, but as the foundation of how we teach and learn.
And that kind of leaves us with this final question to think about. How can you, in your classroom or your school, use these tools not just because you have to, not just for compliance, but to really build a culture where every single student has access and can become an independent learner? Because at the end of the day, that's what it's all about, right? It's more than just a resource. It's a whole new way of thinking.